What's going on, everybody? Jolt here from TheTokenMinorities, and I am back with the Week 11 battle of the GBA Season 8, where your Kansas City Jirachiefs are taking on El Scizor, Lars, and his Borussia Donphan in yet another divisional rematch. Make sure to go check out my opponent's channel, going to be linked down below, and at this point I'm sure his battle is up already as well, as I want to apologize, as this is going up much later than I would have originally planned to upload this video at, for a variety of reasons. Not going to mention them all specifically here, but even so, just now getting around to this, so I do apologize for the video being up relatively late. Also want to apologize for the lack of a team builder video for this week, but I will explain why, I guess now. So let's set the stage a little bit for this match, as this is Lars. Lars is in my division. Lars is a very likely playoff team, and also my most likely playoff opponent in round 1. We already clinched playoffs. We beat Geo last week, clinching playoffs. We are in 100% no matter what. Absolute worst case scenario, we are the 3 seed, and Lars's 2 most likely playoff seeds are the number 2 or the number 3. So what that means is Lars is very likely going to be my round 1 playoff opponent. So this battle is very tricky for me, right? Because I don't want to bring my best against him, especially when I very likely will be playing him in 2 weeks whenever the round 1 of the GBA playoffs starts. So that's kind of tricky. I'm not going to bring my best in this game, okay? That's what I'm trying to say. I'm not going to bring my best, and whatever I do bring to this game, I don't want to show him all the details of it either, and that's why I don't have a team builder for this week. I don't want to talk any more about the team matchup, because that'll give away vital insight as to my own team building process for him by making a second team builder against him at this stage. Obviously for playoffs, you better bet I will, but that's why there was no team builder for this week. I don't want to give any more insight as to my team building process. Plus, I'm bringing a couple new threats this week, mainly because I wanted to see how he would react to those threats, and basically because I just wanted to see what his initial responses were to some of those threats. And you'll see some of that stuff play out here in this game. So basically the goal of this game, honestly, isn't really to win. And that's kind of weird to say, and I'm sure that's weird to hear as well, but that's just the truth. The goal of this game isn't necessarily to win. The goal of this game is to scout, just in case Lars decides to not upload a team builder either. At this point, with it being literally upload day when I'm recording this, I know that he uploaded a team builder, but that was the thought process that I had whenever I was approaching this game, approaching my own prep for this game, and etc. So I hope that explains the general setup for this match. Again, the goal is not to win, the goal is to scout him out, and the sets that I brought this week, I think, do a very good job of doing that. So I'm going to very briefly go over this for you now. So I'm bringing, once again, a Choice Scarf Hydra, an absolutely identical set to what I brought last week, or not last weekend, the first matchup against Lars, and that's because I want to see what his responses are to it. From Team Preview, I'm pretty darn sure it's going to be the Tapu Fini, but we'll see how else he tries to react to the Hydreigon. I'm also bringing the Choice Scarf Gardevoir, very similar, I think exactly the same set as well as last time when I faced him. So I'm bringing dual Scarfers. I'm not bringing the triple Scarf team. I brought triple Scarf against him last time, and it was pretty effective against this team for sure. But yeah, I'm not bringing the Scarfed Arcanine this time because I really wanted to try out some other threats on my team just to see how he reacts to them. So those other threats include the Durant and the Aerodactyl. So we'll start with the Durant. Durant is sub 3 attacks with leftovers, has coverage for his entire team, hits his entire team very hard, assuming that Hustle does not screw me over. But at least in this game, that's not really a big deal one way or the other, because it doesn't, like, this game really isn't that important for me outside of just being able to scout out my opponent. So this was definitely an opportune time to bring Durant. I thought it matched up pretty well on paper. It just puts a lot of pressure on his threats that otherwise put a lot of pressure on me. So Durant was just good for that purpose. Then I have Aerodactyl, which is another offensive threat. I'm running a Life Orb set with Stealth Rock on that as well. Just as, you know, rocks are really good against this team. He has 3 mons that are weak to rocks, and his removal is, they don't remove hazards very easily against my team, so rocks are just really good. And then just Aerodactyl in general applies a lot of pressure. He's mentioned it all season. Edgequake is really good against him, so Aerodactyl was a pretty obvious bring, I think. Not really an obvious bring, but a pretty intuitive bring on my end, and I'm sure he has some sort of prep for it, and we'll see how that plays out here in this match as well. And then I'm bringing a very similar Mega Venusaur set to last time, although this time I'm not bringing the Nature Power. I'm bringing Leech Seed this time instead. I don't think I had Leech Seed last time. I might be wrong on that. I might have had Leech Seed as well, but regardless, we're going to glance over that. Basically, a similar Mega Venusaur set. I have Seismitoad, which is a bit of a gimmick this time around. I'm bringing an Infestation Trapper set just for the heck of it, honestly. I felt like it might be able to trap the Tapu Fini as well as potentially put myself in a position where I can give the Kyurem Black a hard time, as well as I do have Attack, Investment, and Earthquake to do a lot of damage to the Kyurem Black. But yeah, that's generally the team for this week. And with that said, looking at team preview here, Lars decided to bring the Tapu Fini, the Tornadus, the Cobalion, Mega Manectric, the Delphox, and the Kyurem Black. So Delphox has come this week instead of the Gengar, which is fair enough. At team preview, I'm basically expecting this to now be a Choice Scarf to Delphox. That seems like the most likely option, as that would be a good way to check Autotomite Celesteela. Otherwise, I'm expecting the other monster to be relatively similar. I'm expecting a Tailwind Tornadus Eye, as that's what I expected right away at team preview, and really in my prep as well, to be his response to my multi-scarf approach that I brought in the first matchup against him. Tapu Fini, I'm just expecting something really standard with Nature's Madness and probably Defog. The Kyurem Black really only needs Earth Power and Volt Beam coverage for my entire team, so he probably has Sub or Roost on that in the last slots. Mega Manectric, I'm expecting any 4 of the 5 possible moves. It could have like Volt Switch, Thunderbolt, Hidden Power, Grass, Fire coverage, maybe even Signal Beam if he is fearing the Hydreigon. Those are the moves he could possibly have. We'll see what he decides to do, and then the Cobalion is almost certainly going to be his Stealth Rocker in this game. Last time he brought a Choppleberry because he was super terrified of the Breloom, and we'll just see what he decides to bring this week. So we're going to go ahead and jump right on into this match here, as Lars is going to issue the challenge. In terms of my lead matchup, I'm just going to play it safe and run the exact same lead scenario that I ran last time around, because why not? I want to see how he responds to that exact same scenario. I want to see how his prep changed from last week to this week, as I am going to lead off with the Hydreigon, as he leads off with Walnut once again, which is his Tapu Fini, and sets up the Misty Surge. So that's fair enough. He gets me on the lead matchup once again. I'm just going to U-turn, because that might be able to bait in something, or he's not going to bait anything. He's going to leave his Tapu Fini in, and he's going to just go for either Moonblast or Nature's Madness. Regardless, my best play is to go into my Mega Venusaur, because it allows me to get off the Mega Evolution and to begin this cycle that I think will ultimately lead to this Tapu Fini getting trapped by my Seismitoad. So that's what I'm going for here. That cycle begins by clicking Leech Seed as he makes a switch into his Kyurem Black here on this next turn, which is what I'm predicting, and that's exactly what he ends up doing. So I'm going to Mega Evolve, I'm going to fire off the Leech Seed, and what that means is that, one, I get a good chunk of health back on the Mega Venusaur. I'm able to kind of scout out if this Kyurem Black is maximum HP invested, which, once we get to that point, a little bit ahead of myself right now, we are going to be able to see that this is a heavily HP invested Kyurem Black based upon the amount of health I get back from the Leech Seed. But what that actually does, having the Leech Seed on the Kyurem Black, means that my Seismitoad is able to switch in on the Kyurem Black relatively freely at this stage, and basically chew up the Ice Beam. I don't expect him to have any form of coverage for the Seismitoad in this game, so by switching to my Seismitoad here, you can see from this Ice Beam damage that this does a laughable amount of damage. It did like, what, 40 HP to my Seismitoad, so that really slurped that up, and when you add in the recovery from my leftovers as well as the recovery from the Leech Seed, it does a net of basically 0, so that makes this pretty much a counter to the Kyurem Black, which is pretty nice for sure. Now here I'm going to go for the knockoff, expecting him to pull the switch into the Tapu Fini, or potentially to stay in with the Kyurem if he has some form of way to hit my Seismitoad. Regardless, I felt like this was my best play, as I do catch the Tapu Fini with the knockoff, which is really, really good. Probably the best possible move to ever use against the Tapu Fini is knockoff, to be honest, as now I'm going to be able to fire off the Infestation, because why not? He brought it in. I don't expect him to have coverage for this either. Worst case scenario, he goes for a couple Nature's Madnesses followed by a Moonblast, and ultimately I am going to be able to beat that 1v1 as I do fire off the Infestation, and I connect it as he just takes the bait and goes for the Nature's Madness to try to wear down my Seismitoad, whose job wasn't really in this game to check the Mega Manectric, quite honestly. It could have done a nice job of that, but no, its job and on this specific team was actually to take on this Tapu Fini, so I'm very okay with this trade, because basically what that means is now my Hydreigon's going to be really freed up later in the game, as well as this was his counter to Hydreigon, and being able to just get rid of that at this stage in the game is nice for scouting purposes, especially because that will allow me to see what his secondary responses were to Hydreigon, besides just being able to make the obvious, predictable switch into Tapu Fini every single time throughout the game. So that's basically what's going on here. I'm going to be able to take out this thing after he goes for a Desperation Moonblast to try to take me out, to survive on 26 HP. I'm going to fire off the Earthquake, and I believe the Earthquake knocks him out. If not the Earthquake, then the Infestation will, as it is actually the Earthquake on a critical hit. Not sure if that mattered at that point, but I think it would have just changed which effect would have taken out the Tapu Fini. But regardless, get a little health back from my leftovers, as he is going to go straight into his Delphox to check me. Now, I could preserve this. I also could pull the switch into my Hydreigon, expecting him to go for a Psychic, but he could just as easily go for a Dazzling Gleam on this turn, so I am just going to fodder off my Seismitoad here and go straight into my Aerodactyl to either get at my Stealth Rock or to go for an Earthquake. I thought there was a decent chance he might go straight into his Cobalion on this turn, so I did just want to go straight for the Earthquake just in case he did that, because I really want that chip damage off on the Cobalion to ensure that it's going to be, one, less of a response to Hydreigon, and two, less of a check to my Gardevoir. So that was the idea behind that play. Get off a big chunk of damage. I'm expecting this to still be his Stealth Rocker, so I'm assuming this is just going to be fodder for my Aerodactyl here on this turn, as he actually reveals to be Choice Scarfed. So that tells me that I do survive, by the way, because I had a fair amount of HP investment on my Aerodactyl. I'm actually able to knock out the Cobalion, but I'm going to go down to my Life Orb as well. So that was a trade. I'm not sure if it was the best trade necessarily. I really wanted to get at my rocks. I went for rocks on that turn there, just because I really know that rocks are really valuable against Lars later in the game, but unfortunately wasn't able, or I didn't go for the rocks. I would have gone for rocks on the next turn after I took that thing out, but unfortunately I got knocked out by the Iron Head there. But regardless, we double down. I'm going to go into my Gardevoir here, just because I expected him to potentially go into the Kyurem, expecting me to go into my Mega Venusaur, and regardless, Gardevoir seemed like an overall safe play at that stage in the game, as he's going to go straight into his Delphox to actually straight up chew this Moonblast. That did like 10%. So this is AV Delphox. This might even be invested AV Delphox, because that did so little from a nearly max invested Gardevoir. I just found that really impressive. As here I'm going to go straight into my Mega Venusaur, expecting him to expect me to go into my Hydreigon, and now I'm going to, because I know he's AV, pull the switch into my Hydreigon, expecting him to go for a Psychic, because that will allow me to either scare this thing out or get heat chip damage off on this with my Hydreigon's U-turn. I know I need some chip damage on this to be able to knock it out with my Hydreigon's Dark Pulse later on in the game as well. So that's the purpose behind this play. Go for the U-turn, revealing he's probably a max HP Delphox, which I was pretty much confirmed, I think, after the Moonblast damage. It does just go for the Dazzling Gleam as I go back into my Mega Venusaur, and I here really wanted to pull the switch once again to my Hydreigon. Opted not to. I thought he might try to overpredict, as Lars is in a position right now where he needs to make sure he wins this game to make the playoffs, and I'm not really in that kind of position, so I decided to take the safe move just to see if he would maybe over aggressively make an aggressive play, if that makes sense. Yeah. Anyway, so I do go into my Durant and force out the Delphox, as I'm going to just go for the Substitute as he decides to go into his Tornado. So basically what this means is to get off one massive hit with my Durant. Will not be able to take out the Tornadus unless he has a drop defense nature, which I think is pretty unlikely against my team, since he can pretty much get by with all special moves if he wants to. But he does just go for the Heat Wave as I go for the Iron Head, and Durant, my man, look at that damage, Durant. Durant's actually not too bad of a Pokemon. I kind of wish I would have brought it more often. No, I know why I didn't bring it in the past, and I stand by those reasons, but it still did a lot of damage to the Torn there for sure. As I'm going to switch out into my Hydreigon, expecting him to either go for a Heat Wave or to maybe go for a U-turn. Either way, I felt like Hydreigon was overall my safest play. I could have taken any one hit that he went for on that turn, as he sets up a Tailwind. So now my best play is to try to take this thing out with a U-turn, as there should be a good chance that I can knock him out, but it's kind of hard to see with the just the damage bar on Wi-Fi. You can't really see the exact percent that the Tornadus is at. Unfortunately, I'm not able to knock him out with a U-turn, and that's actually really important because I wasn't able to get up rocks earlier on in the game, and we'll see how that comes back into play later on, as I'm going to go into my Gardevoir here to force this thing out. I thought he'd probably go into his Delphox here, but he actually makes a better play given the circumstances and goes into his Kyurem Black, but I'm not really too worried, honestly, about Kyurem Black, just because I do have what is a pretty good switch into this, honestly, in my Durant. I don't think there's any one move he can use to knock me out that's not like HP Fire. with this Kieran Black, especially because it is a leftovers variant instead of like a boosting variant, as I don't think Earth Power would have been able to knock me out from that range. Durant is pretty frail on the special side though, so I'm not entirely sure, but regardless, he reveals the sub here, and I'm just going to, here on the next turn, I believe as the Tailwind peters out, go for a Iron Head of my own. Hopefully I can connect and break the sub, as I do connect, so that's good. Durant is able to break the sub of the Kieran Black, and it is going to fire off a Fusion Bolt of his own here, and Durant's natural bulk is really going to come through. As you can see, this Fusion Bolt is going to do probably not much. It does like, you know, it does like 60 HP or so. That's not bad, honestly, given how low Durant's HP stat is. That's actually a little bit less than I would have expected, but it has a pretty good base defense, so fair enough, as now I'm going to be able to fire off another Iron Head, and if this connects, which it does, Durant is going to be able to get his first kill of the season. Finally, in Week 11, able to pull that off as Kieran Black goes down. Now, Lars is in a position where he can go into any of his mons that outspeed me. He could go into the Torn, he could go into the Manectric. He opts to go into the Manectric, which means I could leave this thing in as sack fodder if I wanted to, but I wanted to keep this thing around because right now it's the only thing that's able to knock out the Delphox from the range it is at until I get a little bit more chip damage on it. So I'm going to go into my Hydra, expecting him to potentially go for a Thunderbolt here, as if he is a 4-attack set, he very well might not have the Volt Switch, and I don't expect him to go for a Signal Beam on that turn if he has it. So going into Hydra was my best play there in my opinion, as he does go for the Volt Switch, and I don't take that very well at all. I think that might be a modest Mega Manectric based upon that damage, but even so, he is going to pull the switch into Mr. Bro, which is his Tornadus. Unfortunately, this is still alive. If this wasn't alive at this stage in the game, Hydra would have probably been able to clean up relatively easily. Unfortunately, that is not quite the case here, as he is able to get up another Tailwind and going to knock out the Tornadus. I'm going to go right into, I believe I go into I either go into Durant or Gardevoir. I think it's Durant. I go into Styx. Okay, I go into Gardevoir here, which forces him into his good boy, which is the Mega Manectric. So basically, I go into Gardevoir because I'm at an amount of health where I can take a hit from either of his remaining 2 Pokemon. And yeah, so what's going to happen here is he's just going to go for the T-Bolt. I could have very well gone for the Shadow Ball here. I think that's why he decided to stay in with his Manectric, just in case I went for the Shadow Ball, is if I was able to catch the Delphox with 2 Shadow Balls, that could have been the end of the Delphox, which means that I would have very likely been able to win this game with my Dual Scarvis here at the end. Despite the fact that Tailwind is up there, I'm going to have at least one turn without Tailwind where I'll be able to outspeed everything in the end game. So I am going to get off a big chunk of damage against this with a Psyshock, and I'm going to sack off my Durant here. Now, if I were to go into my Gardevoir and then into my Hydreigon, I could have spammed Dark Pulse to try to go for game in that fashion, but I opted to not go for the flinch route for personal reasons, and decided to go into my Hydreigon here instead, thinking I might be able to take the Thunderbolt. Very, very unlikely, but there's maybe a chance, as no, I go down here to the T-Bolt, unfortunately, and this just means my Gardevoir is left. The Mega Manectric should be in range of a Shadow Ball based upon the most likely rolls from the Psyshock on the previous turn. That's just what the damage calc was telling me. There was a decent chance I'd be able to take him out with a Shadow Ball in conjunction with a Psyshock, but I think Lars might have had a little bit of extra bulk on this Mega Manectric, or I might have gotten a low roll with the Psyshock, I don't really know, but regardless, this Shadow Ball is actually not able to take him out, but regardless, that wouldn't have been able to take out the Delphox either. So we are going to drop this game, unfortunately, to Lars, but good game to him. I thought he played well, thought he prepped well, but, you know, we still accomplished, I think, what we needed to in this game. The win wasn't really the goal. The goal was to be able to see what he wanted to bring, see how he reacted to what we brought, and basically put us in the best possible position to adapt accordingly for the playoffs. So to that end, I think it all went pretty well, and I'm not too upset about the result. And I believe congrats to Lars as well, as I think with this win he did clinch the playoff position. I don't think he is clinched as my opponent for playoffs yet, but I think it is pretty likely, very likely. So we'll just see what happens on that. He plays Joey in the last week of the season, so it's a relatively strong possibility that he could be. It's a very strong possibility that Lars will end up being my playoff opponent. So, yeah, good game to him. Congrats to him as well. As for the question of the day, pretty simple. What do you think is the best wall breaker in draft format? What is your favorite wall breaker in draft format? There are obviously a lot of them, so I hope I can see a wide variety of answers on that for sure. One of my favorites is probably Darmanitan. I haven't had it in a while, but that was one mod that I think I had a lot of fun building with, just because everyone likes to bring like standard choice Scarf Darmanitan sets, And I enjoyed mixing it up a little bit with some pretty crazy stuff like Belly Drum, like a Fat Bulk Up set, like a Rest Talk set. There's a lot of cool stuff you can do with Darmanitan besides Choice Scarf, so that's one of my favorites. What else? I mean, Durant's kind of cool. I wouldn't say it's my favorite, pretty obviously, considering how little I've brought it this season, but it's a pretty good wall breaker. It did some good damage against Lars here, not that he brought any walls, but it still did a lot of damage against him. Broilum's also a pretty good one, just mention some of the ones on my team here. My team doesn't really have too many wall breakers now that I think about it. Like, Gardevoir is okay as a special wall breaker, I guess. Celesteal, anything with a Z move. Let's be honest, anything with a Z move this gen can pretty much be considered a wall breaker, so yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there. I've listed off a few that I like. What are some of your favorites? Be interested in seeing that in the comments below, but as far as I am concerned, I believe I am done here. Once again, sorry this is so late this week. I'll try to be on time next week as we are playing Cybertron in the final week of the regular season of the GBA. Yet another divisional rematch. Had a pretty close 1-0 victory against him in our first matchup, and really looking forward to the next match against him as well. So with all that said, I think I am done here. Thanks for watching, and I will see you all next week. Peace.